Last year, the Department of Revenue was the center of attention on the acts of privacy, and I was glad to take a leading role in that effort, and glad that we were able to pass legislation that changed the policies of the Department of Revenue with regards to privacy. About the same time, I learned about some of the practices that the Department of Revenue is doing to our businesses. They're going after back taxes during audits. This is an unfair practice, and many of these businesses don't even know that they were required to collect the taxes. No notification has ever been put out. This is simply just unfair and bad business practice, and it hurts small businesses. So this year, myself and a number of legislators have filed multiple bills to address this concern, and I'm glad that a number of them are here working with me on this issue today. I believe that what we need to do is stop the Department of Revenue from notification by audit. That's how they're notifying people that they have to collect these back taxes. And so some of these bills get to that at heart. And I'm glad that these legislators are here to help stop some of this. And at this point, I'll let Senator Dixon speak.
Well, welcome. I want to thank members that are here and other interested parties, and I certainly thank my colleagues in the Senate for a positive vote on what we've done this week regarding the sales tax issue. As I said on the Senate floor, it's certainly not entertaining when I work out, and it's certainly not amusing. One of my workout partners is here among us and can vouch for that fact. So. But what Senator Krause has said is absolutely right. In fact, I quite frankly am very frustrated with the response that we got from the folks at the Department of Revenue when we first tried to have a list that delineated who could be taxed. And one of the responses was, well, we'll just find another way to tax them. That is a level of arrogance that I had not seen heretofore. And it certainly is not a way to encourage economic development in the state, and I found it disconcerting, to say the least, that we would have one branch of government, or one branch of the administration essentially trying to put the boot of government on the throat of the small business and shut them down, one department, and another, economic development, charged with trying to resuscitate them. So it's counterproductive, certainly, to say the least. And I hope that we can move forward with this and other problems that we have seen, as Senator Krause alluded to. And certainly we want to make sure, we took great pains to make sure with the amendment that was added here on the Senate side, with this piece of legislation, that those that are already exempt will remain exempt, because we had to again, in response to the department's unbelievable response, we had to change the list of who could be taxed to a list of who was exempt. And we certainly did not, by any stretch, intend that anyone would change from that status. So we spelled that out clearly. And thank those that are here with us, and hopefully we can get this done.
Well, I first want to thank Senator Krause, Senator Dixon for organizing this, bringing this together. A couple of my House colleagues, Representative Hoskins and Representative Burleson, aren't over here at this time. We got out literally right before this started on, as what all of you know is a major issue with right to work, and Representative Burleson was handling the bill. But I really want to thank Senator Krause for his leadership on this issue. I know that this all came to light, as he said, notification by audit when we have the gym membership issue, and it's not just an issue that is occurring in his district. It can be a statewide issue, and I think it sheds a light on the even broader issue of how complicated it can be to be a small business person and have to be tasked with the overwhelming responsibility of understanding 26 volumes of Missouri statutes. Okay, as a small business person myself, I know how stressful it can be trying to understand and determine what is taxable, what is not taxable. And I know there are always rule changes. It can change at the whim of when a department head changes, an interpretation can change. 1 year something may be an audit finding, the next year it may not. And to us and to Senator Krause's, with the bill he filed and that I filed in the House, will require the Department of Revenue to notify affected sellers when a change in their burden to collect taxes takes place. I know I've heard numerous, not just in the gym side of things, but sometimes the Department of Revenue will just send you a letter with an estimated tax due of that you haven't been paying taxes for the last several years on collecting taxes on this item. So you owe us, based on filings from others in your industry, you owe us a few $100,000. As a small business person, who probably most small business people in this state are probably like myself, and we go day by day, and we need to make our payroll and operate and hope that things continue to go well in the coming years. When you get a letter like that, you lose a lot of sleep at night, and it doesn't have to do with just sales taxes. Sometimes it's just a misunderstanding, but they send those letters and say you owe these taxes, and small business people that don't have the luxury of a full-time legal department that can study what the legislature does, or a lobbyist that can go and take care of or work within the legislature to try to change laws to fix problems. It's tough for them, and so I just want to commend, and Representative Hoskins did show up. I think the bill that he's filed in the House and that Senator Krause filed in the House relating to the burden of proof is a great step in the right direction, because really right now is you get that letter from Department of Revenue and you're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And that I think that's a mistake in the way we operate. So I look forward to continuing to work with the senators and representatives to advance this legislation. I'm hopeful that we're able to get those into law this year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Representative Denny Hoskins. I want to talk a little bit about House Bill 1455 regarding burden of proof. I believe that all Missouri taxpayers, regardless of how big or small their businesses are, should be innocent until proven guilty. Currently, the Department of Revenue has more stringent requirements regarding tax disputes than the IRS does. The IRS believes that if you are, the burden of proof in tax disputes is on the IRS to prove that. However, in Missouri, with some of our larger businesses, the burden of proof with the Department of Revenue is on that particular business. Well, that could be very devastating to that business if Department of Revenue sends a letter to that business and says that, yes, you have to prove that you did this without any forewarning or without any evidence to say that they actually may be innocent or may be guilty. So House Bill 1455, I think, is a definite step in the right direction. We need to continue to rein in the power from the Department of Revenue and help put all our businesses on the same level playing field. Thank you.
And I'm Ray McCarty. I'm president of Associated Industries of Missouri. Very much like you heard from Tracy, both of us have experience having worked at Department of Revenue, and we think what's needed here is what is being provided by the senators and representatives. We think the Department of Revenue needs some guidance, and very clear guidance on what they can and cannot do. Without that guidance, what they're doing is looking at the fine words in the statute and drawing lines that just simply aren't there. And so they're squeezing small businesses, mid-sized businesses, large businesses, all sizes of businesses by squeezing on these fine lines and creating tax liabilities when there aren't tax liabilities. And often that means that taxpayers have to pay that tax out of their pocket. If you think about sales taxes, for example, most of the time sales taxes are collected from the consumers and they're reported to the Department of Revenue. But if you don't know you're supposed to collect those sales taxes, then you have to, and you're caught in an audit, then you have to pay those taxes out of your pocket, often for 3 years back taxes, and that comes out of the business owner's pocket. So that's something that creates a liability. It's a very big hardship for small business in particular, but all sizes of businesses. The burden of proof statute that's in place now was put in place several years ago, and at the same time that the IRS shifted burden of proof for all taxpayers to the IRS, in the state we could only shift it, at the time the administration would only allow us to shift it for smaller taxpayers and only on certain types of tax cases. Unfortunately, the majority of tax disputes are not covered by that law, and larger taxpayers are left guilty until they prove themselves innocent. The legislation that is before the legislature this year would change that and allow all taxpayers to be innocent until proven guilty. We think that's the way it should be. If the department believes that there's additional tax liability, they should be responsible for proving it. And we think these words that will now be put in the statute by these bills would give them very clear direction from the legislatures of what the expectation is of the Department of Revenue. So we think it's a good thing for the Department of Revenue, I think it's a good thing for taxpayers, and we think the legislature is doing what they need to do. There are other areas that we're going to address between now and the end of session. We filed some bills to clarify what the responsibility is with regard to refunds. The Department of Revenue doesn't want to give refunds back that they're supposed to give back under the statute. Very often they throw up roadblocks and keep those refunds from being made to taxpayers when they're supposed to. So we're going to look at trying to help that along a little bit too. So we would just want to say thanks to all these legislators. We thank them for their commitment. We know it's not often the most popular thing to do to take on the bureaucracy. We know it's very tough sometimes, but we thank them for standing up for taxpayers. So.
Good afternoon. I'm Brad Jones. I'm the State Director for the National Federation of Independent Business. I just mentioned that, 77% of our total number of employers in the state have less than 10 employees. So I really appreciated your comments. You know, the legal department, the HR department, the tax department is usually encapsulated all into one person for your average small business. And the one thing that I would say is if ever there's a time that you don't need to have the foot on the neck of small business folks, it's now. They're worried about their health insurance, their taxes, the multitude of other things, making payroll on Friday, which is always a struggle for a lot of small businesses. And, I think what our senators and our representatives are doing with this tax bill is very, very important. And I do still think that small business folks are the backbone and the job creators if you let them. And I think that they're going a long way to try to at least help them to make that payroll on Friday. So I thank you all very much for being here.
Good afternoon. My name is David Overfelt. I'm the president of the Missouri Retailers Association. I also do represent the Missouri Grocers Association. We appreciate all the efforts. I mean, burden of proof, this is a fundamental right of our society. And we believe all entities, persons, businesses should be treated equally. We should be able to prove, we should not have to prove our innocence. Just a bottom line right. On the other issues, notification, we have been there so many times. We've seen policy changes, regs proposed or emergency regs in the past just pop out of nowhere. And we've had to fight those in court, fight them through the process for years. This isn't right. Businesses should be notified when there's a major tax policy change, and we shouldn't be expected to be able to know everything that's going on and what they're thinking in the bureaucracy.
I'm TJ Rehack of Extreme Gymnastics in Lee Summit. Guess I'm the poster child for the laws that these guys are trying to help out with. I was in 2012 May. I was audited. It was a sales tax, use tax, and withholding tax, and I didn't think too much of it. Didn't hear anything back. I just got the letter, and then it was about mid-October. I had an auditor call me and say, "We're going to come in and audit you." And at that point, my attorneys, said, "Yeah, you just go along with the audit. You help them out, whatever they need." So I came in, and the first appointment, he said, "We're going to audit. We're going to charge you sales tax for every bit of business you've ever done, or for the past 3 years. So 2009, 10, and 11, you're going to be charged sales tax for tuition, whatever you've done," which was a shock to me. I've been in the business now 20 years. No one that I knew of was charging sales tax in our industry. So that came out of the blue. And at that point, I had fear set in for my business. 3 years of tax that was never collected. Never knew I had to collect. Talked to my attorney. I talked to the accountants. No one knew. They said you're a service business, so no one knew that this was taxable. Then we go back and forth. I talked to the auditor's boss, and he said, "Well, maybe we're in a gray area trying to figure something out." So fast forward later, I am now being charged a hefty sum. His comment was this was his biggest audit he's ever done. So it's an amount of money that's too much for a small business to pay. I mean, it can ruin it can ruin my business. Kept to it, and at this point, we're still, I guess we're looking towards a administration hearing. They don't want to compromise. I'll tell you, in 2013, I collected all sales tax. I became compliant, and I've paid sales tax ever since then. I actually was nice enough to have them put 2012 in the audit, because I said, hey, you came to me in May and you said I owed money for 2012, and you might as well put that in the audit, because I didn't collect anything for 2012 here come November, and you're just going to audit for me that later. So here I am stuck with a bill for 4 years and trying to run a business, and hopefully everything works out, in the end. I don't know. But I appreciate everything these guys have done, because I'm on the front line, and it really, it's not fun. It's stressful being a business owner in this.
This is a classic case of government coming in and cutting the legs out from underneath businesses. I'm calling today the President Pro Tem to ask the Government Accountability Committee to investigate these situations in the Department of Revenue on collection of sales tax and other things. And I hope he calls for that. We'll be glad